They couldn't have planned this any better. So we have some huge updates that have just dropped surrounding the Toronto Blue Jays free agency plans as it pertains to one player in particular that has fans very intrigued. We're going to break down those new updates and discuss what it means going forward. But folks, not only that, we have a trade that happened last night that has some unexpected implications on the Jays free agency plans as well, including their pursuit of Bichette. A ton to go over on this episode, as well as a few other updates. But before we get into it all, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. You guys have been absolute beasts with the support. Folks, things are starting to pick up now. We saw the first, shocking trade yesterday, unexpected trade of the offseason. But we have a bunch of things to go over today, and things have just kind of fell perfectly into place for the Jays in one surprising aspect. And let's dive into a report that dropped yesterday night. And it is surrounding Edwin Diaz and the Mets. Now, the Mets made a big trade, which we'll dive into later in this video here. But a new report dropped following that, which provides some interesting insight as to not only the Mets' plans, but the Jays as well. So Diaz and Alonso are beloved Mets. The Mets hold interest in re-signing both of them. So keep that obviously in mind here. But the Mets are not going to be persuaded by emotion. It may play some part, but if either or both Diaz and Alonso return, it will mostly be because the cold hard facts that it makes sense. And to that point, contract length is a sticking point in talks between Diaz and the Mets, league sources say. Now, you might be wondering, why does this impact the Jays? The Jays, according to multiple people, are the not favorites necessarily, but one of the big reports was that they've already met with Edwin. Diaz and Ken Rosenthal came out and said that they are actively pursuing Edwin Diaz, of course, with the biggest holdup being the Mets, right? The Mets are the biggest, competitor for the Jays being the Mets. Now, there is some sticking points in their conversations, which leaves the door open. Now, the report basically goes on to say that he's looking for 5 years, $102 million, and the Mets are looking at a 3-year contract. And if the Mets and Diaz fail to reach an agreement, they will pursue other guys. But for the Jays, this is very notable because we know Ken Rosenthal recently came out and said that the Jays, among a couple of other teams, are very interested in pursuing not only Edwin Diaz, but bullpen help in general. And if things fell through the cracks on the Mets side, which it seems like they have, at least as of this point, the Jays can flex that financial muscle now and really make an impact, specifically, regarding adding to their bullpen. And you add on to that a new report that dropped by Keegan Matheson here, which we'll dive into in a moment. It all starts to come together for the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, again, they already met with the closer Edwin Diaz at the general manager meetings back in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, which is obviously a good sign. They are interested in Edwin Diaz, and Ben Nicholson-Smith has said at multiple points that the bullpen is going to be one of the biggest aspects where they're looking to upgrade alongside their starting pitching. This is very good news. Now, Keegan Matheson also dropped an article kind of revealing that it's not just Bichette the Jays have to look out for here. And you can see this is a new article, or at least an updated article as of yesterday night. The Blue Jays will spend December shopping in the most expensive aisles of the store. Yes, they'll be in on Bo. Yes, they'll be in on Tucker. But they're also going to be in on some of the other moves. And one of the biggest questions is about Jeff Hoffman being the closer. And we know, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys are upset with Hoffman after, basically blowing the World Series. But it is what it is. He finished with a 4.37 ERA. Of course, Miguel Rojas hit the home run. But we know Ross Atkins, you can see down there in one of the middle paragraphs, he said that Jeff is not married to being the closer and that Ross Atkins and the Toronto Blue Jays aren't married to him being a closer either. And you look at some of the bullpen arms that are out there, there's a lot of absolutely fantastic, absolute beasts available for the pickings. And Keegan Matheson mentions Edwin Diaz. He is the top reliever on the market and will command a large contract, something the Jays haven't handed out often to relievers. But Ken Rosenthal said they may be willing to do so for the first time this offseason, especially after all the extra money they got from the World Series. I think Bob Nightingale reported $50 million or something like that extra in profits that they gathered. And it's going to cost $102 million, right? Like, it's going to cost a lot of money. And we know they're going to be aggressively pursuing multiple, avenues here. But the biggest thing for the Jays will be specifically about the bullpen arm. And things are just falling pretty perfectly into place for them to pursue a heavy bullpen arm. Now, there is going to be other teams available. There'll also be other players. You can see here, Devin Williams, Robert Suarez, Ryan Helsley, which will have a full video coming out on later this week, probably, as things start to pick up a little bit. But as if you take a step back and think about it, the best way that this team can get better, aside from the Kyle Tuckers of the world, the Bichettes of the world, we know they're going to be pursuing them. We have some updates on that in a minute. It will be the starting pitching staff and the bullpen. Don't be surprised if all this smoke turns into fire now, especially with Edwin Diaz, now that the Mets seemingly at this point are stalled in negotiations, right? So keep all of that in mind. And he's going to be turning 32. Do you want to give a reliever a 5-year deal? Not under normal circumstances. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, Edwin Diaz isn't a normal circumstance. He's one of the best relievers we've ever seen. He's coming off of one of the best years of his career, a 1.63 ERA, and at a time where every reliever is volatile, right? There's only a couple in the MLB who aren't. Edwin Diaz being one of them, and former MLB pitcher, Emmanuel Clase, he was the other one. They, especially Edwin Diaz, obviously Clase suspended now for life. Diaz is elite, and he would be worth giving that money to, especially at a point now where you could really use a back-end arm. And it's crazy to say, Jeff Hoffman was supposed to be that. He only got paid $11 million a year over 3 years. For 3 years, $33 million. You get one more guy. If the Mets are out, the Jays can take advantage of that, hop on it, and really flex their financial muscle. And that's why things have fell perfectly into place for the Toronto Blue Jays. And they couldn't really plan it any better if this is the case, because they have the money to spend, they have the extra profits, and beyond Kyle Tucker, beyond Bichette, spend more money. You have the ability to do so. Like I always mention in every video, it seems like, who knows what's going to happen in 2027 with the CBA. Go for it this year. The vibes are high. The brotherhood is high. Add one more elite reliever. Now, speaking of moves that are being made, you can see right here, yesterday night, the Mets and the Rangers are finalizing a trade that would send Marcus Semien to the Mets and outfielder Brandon Nimmo to the Rangers. And every trade at this point, this is a shocking trade. No, tons of money. First of all, you very rarely see one-for-one deals with blockbuster names. Second of all, Brandon Nimmo was in New York his entire career, has a no movement clause, which he waived to go to Texas. I'm sure he saved some money on the taxes there and things like that, the tax-free state and all that. But I do want to bring up here, this is interesting because a couple different things. The Mets now are getting an infielder, which takes them, you would assume, out of the Bichette sweepstakes, which means not many suitors left for Bichette. But at the same time now, the Mets have a spot open in the outfield. So you can see here the good news, Bo is down to one suitor. The other good news, Kyle Tucker might end up staying in the NL. So there's pretty good, they couldn't have planned this any better as well, where if the Jays don't get Kyle Tucker, it seems like he'll probably stay in the NL. But this probably takes the Mets out of out of their plans for Bichette. Now, how deep were they involved in Bichette? Could they still get him? Absolutely. But on the surface of it, they just acquired a guy in Marcus Semien who has a lot of money, a lot of years left on his deal. And of course, they got rid of a fan favorite in Brandon Nimmo. They're not going to go out and get Bichette. They're prioritizing defense 100%. That's what every reporter, Andy Martino, all these guys, Andy Marino, sorry, is, they're all reporting the same thing. They are going for defense, which Bichette doesn't bring. They're going with Marcus Semien. In the same vein, this probably takes a lot of the Mets out of, contention for Bo. Could put them into the contention for Kyle Tucker, where Steve Cohen can just go out and spend a lot of money. So it's interesting. Overall, good news, though, and things are starting to fall pretty perfectly into place here for the Jays, but they need to actually execute on this. The market's moving slowly, but we're going to keep you up to date every step of the way. You guys are absolute beasts. Let me know down below what your thoughts are. Cheers.